So I've had my Suntaste Solar Oven out today, and I've finished doing a bit of a bake and it's still nice and hot. So what I thought I'd do is a bit of a test of some dehydrating of herbs in it. And on my deck at the moment, I have a heap of oregano. So what I'm going to do is harvest a bunch of that and then pop it on one of these cake trays and then pop that in my solar oven and see how that goes with dehydrating it. Now, normally when I do my dehydration, I do it in my Excalibur or my Nesco dehydrator. So I will say this one today is a little bit of an experiment, but maybe you'll have a bit of fun following along and seeing with me how it all goes. There's a nice bunch. And we'll just pop that on the rack. So these have all had a bit of a haircut now. And I've got another good bunch. And let's pop these on the rack too. I reckon that'll do for our first little test. I don't want to have too much in there. I want to ensure that we can get a bit of airflow around all these herbs once we pop it into the solar oven. Before I pop the herbs into the Suntaste, I just want to make sure it's oriented correctly, and I'll do my normal test. And I can see that the sun is completely on this side. And we've got a bit of shadowing on this side, which means I need to spin this a little bit. Keeping in mind we are in the southern hemisphere here, so we want to have a bit of the shading on this side. Actually, it seems to need a fair bit of adjustment. There we go. I've got a little bit of shadow on this side, and that's fine because the sun is going to continue to move. The other thing we need to do is just make sure that the mirror is oriented correctly and that the sunlight is actually going into the cooker itself. So let's take the back off. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to leave the back of this off as I put the herbs in. And you can see that there is a bit of airflow around them because this little rack here is a raised one. This is actually one of my cake racks that I'm going to use today. What I'm going to do to start off with is actually leave the back off completely because you do need lots of airflow when you are dehydrating, and I'm going to see how that goes with the back off completely. Otherwise, I just suspect it's going to be too hot in the solar oven. It was sitting at about 130 degrees earlier, so that's definitely way too hot, and it would cook these herbs as opposed to dehydrate them. I'm not sure how well the temperature is showing up on the gauge in here. There's obviously a fair bit of light bouncing around at the moment, which might be affecting the shot, but it's sitting at about 80 degrees Celsius in here at the moment. And I should mention that when I normally do dehydrating, you're looking at around 50 to 60, depending on the type of herb that you're doing. With the really sensitive ones, the lower 50s is normally what you're looking for. So this is actually quite hot at the moment for dehydrating our herbs. I can do something about that though. I can actually adjust the angle of the mirror at the top. And what I might do is actually bring that down a little bit, just to bring the temperature down a little bit. And I'll keep a bit of an eye on that just to make sure it does maintain enough temperature just to keep the herbs dehydrating. An hour and a half has passed and I've been neglecting these a bit. But let's have a bit of a look. You can see they're actually starting to dry off quite nicely. I might give them a bit of a fluff up again just so that we get that airspace back around them. You can see they've wilted, but that's really no different to what happens when I do this same exercise in the dehydrator. They're actually dehydrating really nicely. Just coming around, I can see that the temperature is now the 50 degrees Celsius mark. Now, I have neglected this a little bit and I haven't been spinning it around, so let's do that now. Let's have a bit of a look at how far off we are. Let's check the other side. Yeah, see there's a lot of shade on this side now, which means I really don't have my orientation correct. So let's spin this around, chase that sun. There we go, finally got a bit of shading. So you can see I'd left that way too long before spinning it around, and that's why we dropped a fair bit of temp. And I'll also kind of move the mirror a bit to get that also back into position. And we'll see if it picks up a bit of temp again. 2.5 hours has now passed, and they're actually starting to get a little bit crispy already. So what I'm going to do is turn them over again, and that way we can ensure that, again, they're all fluffed up and we get plenty of airflow between the different stems of this oregano. And you can see the ones that have been stuck together are a bit more moist than the ones that were at the top. Unfortunately, we've got a fair bit of cloud around now, and that means the temperature has dropped a fair bit in the solar oven, and I can see it's kind of below that 50 degrees Celsius. It's definitely warmer than the ambient air temperature in there though, so I'm gonna keep persevering with it, and we do get some pops of sun every so often, and hopefully it will continue drying. So I'm getting really experimental now because we've had a fair bit of cloud cover, and it means that I've lost a fair bit of temperature in the solar oven. So what I've done is I've actually put the back on, but not completely on. I've propped it with this bit of metal here, and that means that I still have quite a wide opening at the back, and that will still allow the moisture to escape, which is what I need for dehydrating. But I'm hoping it will refract a little bit more light into the solar oven, and I'll get a bit of the temperature back up again. So we'll give it a couple of minutes and check and see how that goes. Looks like putting the back on has worked a treat, and it's now sitting on about 60 degrees Celsius again. So that is something that I will probably continue to do if I'm getting a little bit of cloud and the temperature is dropping. And as you can see at the back here, it still is propped open, so the moisture can escape, but I do have more of the sunlight refracting into the solar oven. And looking in there, that herb is starting to look a lot more dehydrated than it was earlier. These have been in now for about 4.5 hours, and they are looking pretty much done. So you can probably hear that they're really crispy, and all the moisture is pretty much out of these. And that was a pretty similar time frame to my Nesco and my Excalibur dehydrators in terms of time to dehydrate. The advantage with this though is it's used absolutely no electricity whatsoever, and I've got my beautiful dehydrated herbs. After this little experiment today, I'm definitely keen to do a bit more dehydrating in my solar oven, and particularly when the tomato harvests come through, I'm keen to see how that goes. So if that's something you want to have a bit of a look at, maybe consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll share that when our tomato harvest happens a little later in the summer. So I appreciate you joining me today as we did this little experiment, having a go at using the Suntaste Sunok as a solar dehydrator. Definitely, if you have a go, keep the back open, but it did work a treat. Thanks for joining. Catch you later.